Front and Center. Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Front and Center, a program that focuses on developments in the Philippines, legislation that provides policies and directions that strive to promote a better economy for the country. Issues that concern the welfare and well-being for every Filipino, all of this and more will be Front and Center. Join me in this half-hour program here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You can watch this program on our radio or Radyo Pilipinas World Service Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, Radyo Pilipinas World Service. The program Front and Center and the programs of Radyo Pilipinas World Service can also be heard on the following shortwave frequencies: 12.010 MHz, 15.640 MHz, and 17.820 MHz. So come and join us for another edition of Front and Center. I am your host for this episode, Win Peñano. The Philippine government, through the efforts of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and other government agencies, particularly the Departments of Health, the Interior and Local Government, and the Budget and Management, will be creating a council that will ensure the proper and efficient implementation of the country's Universal Health Care Law. The council, aptly called the Universal Health Care Council, will focus on the judicious use of the Special Health Fund already incorporated in the 2024 proposed Philippine National Budget. The Council will standardize and integrate the health policies to harmonize and make efficient the system that is also being used by different health systems by local government units or LGUs or towns and provinces. Here's Philippine Health Secretary Teodoro Herbosa explaining in a press briefing the approved recommendation for the creation of the Universal Healthcare Council.
This morning, I presented the updates on the Universal Healthcare Act of 2019 to our President. The UHC law was enacted on February 2019, and the vision was progressive realization that can be achieved through a systems approach, clear role delineation of stakeholders, and ensure equitable access and affordable health care and protection without financial risk. To give a background, we had once a very highly centralized healthcare system. This was devolved because of the Local Government Code of 1991. The DOH maintained its role as steward of national policies, plans, standards, and regulations, but healthcare now is delivered in a fragmented system of more than 1,000 LGUs. Under the Universal Healthcare Act, the DOH, the DILG, PhilHealth, and the local government units will endeavor to integrate, and that's the key word, integrate into province and citywide health systems. I provided the following updates to the President. Since 2021, after the law was passed, 71 LGUs have committed to integrate their local health systems. These were called Universal Healthcare Integration Sites and consisted of 59 provinces and 12 highly urbanized cities, or about 66 or 93% of those that initiated preparations for integration and are gearing full functional implementation of the integration plans and access to an integrated health system by its constituents. Also, by starting this year in 2023, we already engaged 5 UHC integration sites to become primary care provider network sandbox or trials or pilots. These are Baguio, Bataan, Quezon, Guimaras, and South Cotabato. And these networks, we contracted them, and they're being piloted as a test run for these networked healthcare systems. We also have additional, next year, healthcare provider networks with packages for additional payment mechanisms. Since the provincial or city health boards will be managing this citywide or province-wide health systems, it is important that members of the health boards, particularly governors or mayors as chair, are provided the necessary capacity to manage local health systems. The President approved the Department of Health's proposal of creating a Universal Healthcare Coordinating Council through an executive order. So we will be crafting and drafting this, and the council will be composed of the concerned government agencies, namely the Department of Health, which will serve as the council chair, the DILG as the co-chair, and the other agencies like DICT, DBM, DOF, PhilHealth, Professional Regulation Commission, NEDA, and probably TESDA, CHED, and DepEd. We will standardize the health policies. The council will serve as a national governance bodies that will oversee the implementation of Universal Health Care Act nationwide. The project and estimate total national cost for UHC, and also implementation of the Universal Health Care at local government level. It will serve as the venue to discuss relevant concerns that might be raised during the implementation of UHC. Further, the President also instructed the DILG to expedite the review of EO 138 on the implementation of the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas-Garcia petitions and incorporate some of these to the Universal Healthcare financing reforms in the amendments. So the Department of Health is very pleased with the President has given full support to the Department's vision of transforming the healthcare system of the Filipino through the Universal Healthcare Act.
Meanwhile, in the midst of rising prices of basic commodities brought about by local and global or geopolitical factors, the Philippine government is doing its best to provide relief to Filipinos experiencing the brunt by providing mitigating measures to help them cope with it. And one of this is the Universal Health Care Act, passed into law in 2019 with its primary goal of providing quality health care and services to all Filipinos by automatically enrolling them to the government's health insurance provider, the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation or PhilHealth. However, in the past few years, the government's health insurance provider was involved directly or indirectly in various issues, primarily on fund allocation payment for private and government hospitals providing healthcare services, inaccurate assessments on appropriate or corresponding financial payments or reimbursements to patients and even to medical doctors. These issues facing or has been plaguing the Public Insurance Corporation did not go unnoticed by President Marcos Jr. and has for some time instructed the agency to make changes in its operations for the benefit of the Filipino people. With the help of the country's health chief, by virtue of his recommendation for the creation of the Universal Health Care Council, President Marcos's approval of the recommendation has set PhilHealth to a more efficient, effective, and progressive government insurance agency by ensuring that the health funds provided not only by the government but also by working or employed Filipinos through their contributions or premiums will be safeguarded and will be used appropriately on all strata of Philippine society from the national to the local level. The Universal Health Care Council will be chaired by the Department of Health and co-chaired by the Department of the Interior and Local Government, with members including the Department of Budget and Management, Department of Finance, Professional Regulation Commission, Department of Communications and Information Technology, and may even include the Commission on Higher Education and the Department of Education. That's the first part of our program. We'll be right back after a short break.
Time to celebrate kulturang Pinoy. Tradisyon, musika, sining, literatura at iba pa. Anything and everything fun and Filipino. Ito ang Pinoy Kultura.
A blessing of safe voyage and a chance to cool off. Pinagmamalaki ng kanta ang Antipolo, named after tipolo or breadfruit, prolific in the area. The city prides itself as a pilgrimage capital of the Philippines. Two of its more popular attractions are the historical church of the Nuestra Señora de la Paz y Buen Viaje and its summer popular waterfalls, ang Hinulugang Taktak. The Franciscan missionaries built the church in 1578 and the Jesuits administered it in 1591. Thousands traveled to pray to Our Lady of Peace and Good Voyage, brought in from Mexico in 1626 and enshrined in the cathedral. A favorite tradition is trekking to the shrine on Good Friday Eve and May 1st. Another tradition is having new cars blessed at the church. Many believe it will ensure the safety of the car and its passengers. OFWs also pray for success abroad. Pagkatapos ng pagpapala sa misa ay ang inaabangan ng mga bata, ang pagligo sa sikat na hinulugang taktak, described playfully in its song. It was first opened in July 1952, became a national park in September 1990, and a protected landscape in November 2000. In 2002, it had to be rehabbed because of water pollution. In February 2020, Hinulugang Taktak reopened, together with unique recreational installations for wall climbing, hanging bridges, and a spider web platform. And don't forget, before you leave, ang pasalubong. Sikat sa lugar ang suman at mangga. But you can also bring home antipolo in a jar, like cocoa jam, latik, kalamay, or adobong kasoy. So, no time to waste. Get into the culture, enjoy a blessing, and have some fun. Tayo na!
Yan.
The Republic of the Philippines for more than 75 years. Ito po ang Presidential Broadcast Service.
You're still listening and watching Front and Center here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Public transportation in the Philippines is a major part of the country's economy as it provides affordable means of transportation for people to their workplaces, schools, tourism spots, or any place that is accessible by land. Public utility vehicles like the iconic jeepneys or the tricycles plying along the busy streets and thoroughfares make sure people get to where they need to be in the most affordable fare allowed by law. But what happens when prices of petroleum products rise due to the low supply and high demand caused by the restriction or reduction of oil outputs by oil-producing nations such as Russia and Saudi Arabia? Add to it the ever-growing concern and fear of the current geopolitical situation in the Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Hamas conflict, where the international community is keenly monitoring and hoping the situation does not further escalate into a regional conflict. All of this and more affect the movement of oil prices in the international market, which eventually will be shouldered by the consumers, meaning all of us. But here in the Philippines, the most affected are the public utility drivers because they are the ones buying the retail price of diesel, which they use to power those public utility vehicles to transport ordinary Filipinos to and from work or to anywhere they need because they don't own their own car or vehicle. The high price of diesel, which has been rising incrementally for the past 2 weeks, is currently hurting the income of public utility drivers, thus lessening the income they take back to their families. To help these public utility drivers, the Philippine government has implemented a subsidized system for them, providing financial assistance by way of a cash card that, with a certain amount ranging from 5,000 pesos to 10,000 pesos or more, can be used to buy diesel until they have used up the funds in the card. The subsidized systems requires multi-million, if not billion pesos in funding. But like any private or government program, the subsidy for transport utility vehicle drivers also has its problems. For one, under the previous guidelines, it takes too long for the concerned government agencies to release funds to provision or to be allocated in the program due to the provision of the law that requires that a barrel of oil must hover around $80 to $85 per barrel for 3 months before the government is allowed to approve the allocated fund and release it to the targeted beneficiaries. 3 months is a long wait for a public utility driver to get financial aid. Besides, a lot of things can happen within 3 months. The prices of oil per barrel can go down within 1 or 2 weeks due to the volatile nature of the commodity, effectively rendering the subsidy unapplicable by law in the Philippines. But the current administration, under the leadership of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., is bent on changing this policy with the help of the country's Department of Energy, Department of Budget and Management, Department of Transportation, and other concerned government agencies. President Marcos recently approved the adjustment of the trigger mechanism that will allow the release of subsidy funds for the public utility vehicle drivers by reducing the 3-month period of moratorium to just 1 month of waiting period. The move, according to the country's Department of Energy Chief, Rafael Lutilla, is a more than welcome relief for the said sector. Here's Department of Energy Secretary Rafael Lutilla.
The President called for the sectoral meeting in order to review the mitigating measures for high fuel prices. And among those who attended the meeting were the Department of Transportation, the Department of Trade and Industry, National Economic and Development Authority, Department of Budget and Management, Department of Interior and Local Government, and the Department of Information and Communication Technology, as well as the Department of Agriculture. So the highlights of the meeting resulted in the following. One, the President gave instructions on changing the language of the 2024 GAA provision on fuel subsidies for the transport sector in order to shorten the trigger period from 3 months to 1 month and simplify the release requirements. For those of you who are not familiar with the trigger period, whenever the Dubai price per barrel exceeds $80 for 3 months, then that will be the trigger for the provision of subsidies to the transport sector drivers, public utilities, including tricycle and other public utilities. So with this simplification or shortening of the period, we will be able to release the subsidies in a shorter period of time. The second is the simplification of the release requirements. So this time, as proposed by the Department of Budget and Management to Congress, the guidelines will need only to be agreed upon by the Department of Budget and Management, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Energy. And these can be released upon the finalization of the list of beneficiaries by the Department of Transportation for those which have franchises, and then by the Department of Interior and Local Governments for those tricycle drivers, and by the Department of Trade and Industry for delivery service drivers.
The lessening of the waiting period or the monitoring window to 1 month from its previous 3 months, and the streamlining of the process, as well as the approval to release the subsidy funds, will allow drivers of public utility vehicles and delivery riders a respite from the brunt of the rising oil prices, a move by the government that just comes in the right time. But it is not just the public utility drivers the President is concerned about. He is also looking out for private motorists who, like public utility drivers, also feel the pain of the rising gasoline prices that likewise take away a considerable amount from their income. At the same press briefing held in Malacañang Palace, Secretary Lotilla unveiled President Marcos Jr.'s directive for the voluntary 20% ethanol blend to be used in gasoline products by the end of 2023. The Philippine Energy Chief emphasized that the voluntary 20% ethanol blend in gasoline products is a mitigating measure by the government to help private motorists in the face of rising gasoline prices. Currently, the Philippines is already implementing a mandatory 10% ethanol blend in gasoline products.
The second important point that was agreed upon was the implementation of the voluntary 20% ethanol blend for gasoline which is targeted for approval by the end of 2023. As for those of you who are using gasoline, you know that we have a mandatory requirement of 10% blend of ethanol with gasoline, and the new policy that we will be implementing is voluntary and raising it to 20%. And this is primarily a price mitigation measure because because ethanol, especially imported ethanol, is cheaper than the price of gasoline. So right now, the price of gasoline without ethanol is around 56.89. Then it will result in a price differential of around 1 peso and 28 centavos, or up to even 1 peso and 50, depending on, of course, on the prices. The local ethanol price per liter is currently around 79 pesos and 49 centavos, which is higher than the imported ethanol, which is at 41 pesos and 44 centavos. But local production of ethanol can only support 48% of the 10% blend, and therefore the utilization of a higher share of imported ethanol will result in lower pump prices because of the increased blend.
The press briefing held in Malacanang Palace, presided over by the Philippines Department of Health and Department of Energy, conveying President Marcos Jr.'s directives, only shows that his administration is keen and aware of the plight of the ordinary Filipino, and his cabinet, together with other government officials, are looking for ways to mitigate, if not totally lessen, the burden of inflation or rising prices, which was a major concern of the general public in the latest survey. Meanwhile, on the 22nd of October 2023, China's Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels tried to prevent anew the Philippine routine resupply to BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal, deliberately bombing Philippine supply boat Unaiza May 2 and its escort Philippine Coast Guard vessel BRP Cabra. The other supply boat Unaiza May 1 completed the delivery to the troops aboard BRP Sierra Madre. The incident was strongly condemned by the Philippines, while the Chinese government claims that the Philippine vessels intentionally hit the Chinese Navy or maritime vessels. Philippine Defense Chief Secretary Gilberto Teodoro reacted swiftly to the incident and held a press briefing to inform the public of the factual information that had transpired in the area. Here's Philippine National Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro.
The President called a special command conference this morning of the National Security and Defense Cluster in order to be briefed and to give his guidance on the latest violation by China of the sovereignty of the Republic of the Philippines. The Philippine government views the latest aggression by China as a blatant violation of international law. China has no legal right or authority to conduct law enforcement operations in our territorial waters and in our exclusive economic zone. We are taking this incident seriously at the highest levels of government. The use by China of brute force behind these ingenuous facades necessitates this course of action. We called for this press conference to give you a clear and factual narrative of what transpired. The Chinese government is deliberately obfuscating the truth. The Philippine Navy and the Philippine Coast Guard are here to give you an undistorted narration of the illegal acts of the Chinese vessels. In short, on or about 6:04 in the morning of Sunday, October the 22nd, 2023, while conducting legitimate rotation and resupply operations within the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines, Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels, in blatant violation of international law, harassed and intentionally hit Unaiza May 2 and Philippine Coast Guard vessel BRP Cabra. This occurred within the 200-mile exclusive economic zone of the Philippines, which China has no jurisdiction, authority, or right to conduct any operations whatsoever. This is a serious escalation of the illegal activities conducted by the Chinese government in the West Philippine Sea, in complete disregard of any norm or convention of international law. Chinese Ambassador Huang Xilian has been summoned today by Secretary Enrique Manalo of the Department of Foreign Affairs to condemn the reckless and illegal act of the Chinese government. Likewise, Philippine Ambassador to China, Jaime Flor Cruz, has been instructed to convey the same to the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Philippine Coast Guard has been directed to proceed swiftly with its maritime investigation in accordance with international maritime safety regulations. We acknowledge the support of our allies and like-minded nations such as the United States, Japan, Australia, Germany, Canada, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and the European Union in condemning China's aggression and expansionist actions. We call on our people to stand behind the government in executing our constitutional mandate to secure the national interest in the West Philippine Sea. Well, I think it is really very ironic that on this very day, there is the start of the second round of discussions on the proposed Code of Conduct, which is hosted by China. Whereas just yesterday, they were in blatant disregard of international law. And within our jurisdiction, likewise. So what kind of good faith can we expect from them? And that we will wait for our representatives to that Code of Conduct meeting to disclose or to report to our people. But I repeat once again that what happened yesterday was a serious and egregious violation of international law and an escalation of their expansionist and aggressive action. And yet, today, they are hosting a proposed declaration of a negotiation, the proposed declaration of Code of Conduct. Now, what kind of message is this signaling? I want to know, and we deserve undistorted answers, the truth from the government of China, because once again we repeat, they have neither jurisdiction nor authority to conduct any sort of governmental operations within our 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. And no justification they can give will stand the test of credence before our own people and, more importantly, before the whole world.
Military and security analysts, even international studies experts, read that China deliberately collided with the Philippine vessels to test and see the reaction of the United States. Was China really testing the waters to see what the U.S. would do to uphold its commitment to the Philippines to be a strong ally in the face of the growing tension in the West Philippine Sea? As of now, while doing this program, only words of support for the Philippines have been relayed by several countries while strongly condemning the latest actions of China. They urge Beijing to follow the internationally based rules of law. For the US, we still need to see a tangible move on their part, but just like what Defense Secretary Teodoro said, there are matters of operational concerns that need to be divulged because it's a matter of national security. And that concludes today's edition of Front and Center here in Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You can watch this program every Sunday at 10 a.m. on Radyo Pilipinas World Service's Facebook page and also on our YouTube channel. The program Front and Center and other programs of Radyo Pilipinas World Service can also be heard to the following shortwave frequencies: 12.010 MHz, 15.640 MHz, and 17.820 MHz. Together with our main host and station manager, Mr. Ray Sampang, and our technical team composed of Mr. Leo Magpayo, Mrs. Bea Gasa de Guzman, Mr. Jerome Toledo, Mr. Nilo Junela, Miss Susan Aison, and Mr. Anthony Pimentel, I'm your host for today, Win Peñano. Join us again next week in another episode of Front and Center. Good day and mabuhay from the Philippines.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.